Hollywood star Goldie Hawn doesn't know what will happen on the seemingly normal talk show. It was supposed to be a normal evening, but it turned into a disaster after Jimmy Fallon's provocations. Before we dive into the story, let us know where you're watching from in the comments and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the latest stories. The iconic blue curtain parted, and Jimmy Fallon bounded onto the stage. The band struck up a lively tune, and the announcer's voice boomed, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Goldie Hawn." The crowd erupted as Goldie stepped into the spotlight, her blonde hair shimmering like a halo. She wore an elegant cream pantsuit, its soft lines accentuating her graceful poise. "Goldie Hawn, everybody," Jimmy said, leaning forward, his voice brimming with enthusiasm. "You look amazing. How do you do it?" The crowd cheered, and Goldie laughed, tilting her head back. "Oh, Jimmy, you're too kind. I just try to keep laughing. It's the best medicine, you know?" Her voice was light, but her eyes studied him, reading the room. The audience ate it up, clapping. But Jimmy's grin widened, a touch too sharp like a cat toying with a mouse. They bantered for a moment. Goldie shared a quick story about her grandkids, and Jimmy tossed in a playful quip about her yoga routine. It felt like classic late-night fare, easy chatter to fill airtime. But then Jimmy leaned back, tapping his note cards against the desk, his tone shifting. "So, Goldie," he said, his voice casual but laced with something pointed. "Let's talk about the Oscars. Big night, right? But I noticed you weren't there this year. What's up with that? They didn't invite you because, what, people don't remember you anymore?" The words landed like a slap. The audience gasped, then fell silent, a murmur rippling through the crowd. A camera zoomed in on Goldie's face, catching a fleeting shock in her eyes before her smile returned, tighter, more guarded. Backstage, Carla froze, her phone slipping from her hand. The producer in the control room hissed, "What the hell is he doing?" as monitors flickered with close-ups of the unfolding scene. Goldie tilted her head, her laugh soft but edged with steel. "Oh, Jimmy," she said, her voice steady. "I've been to plenty of Oscars, darling. I even won one, remember?" The audience chuckled, a few clapping in support. But the tension didn't break. She leaned forward slightly, her blue eyes locking onto his. "I'm pretty busy these days with things that matter, like helping kids with their mental health. Maybe the Academy just knows I'm out here doing the real work." Her tone was light, but the jab was clear, and the crowd murmured in approval. Jimmy laughed, a little too loudly, his fingers drumming on the desk. "Fair, fair," he said, but his eyes gleamed with something unreadable. He glanced at his note cards again, then back at her, his smile curling into something almost predatory. "Okay, but let's be real, Goldie. Back in the day, you were the queen of those dumb blonde roles, right? Cactus flower, shampoo. I mean, was it fun playing the ditzy blonde? Or were you just, not acting?" He punctuated the question with a wink, as if it were a joke, but the barb was unmistakable. The audience's reaction was mixed. Some laughed nervously, others shifted uncomfortably. A woman in the front row whispered to her friend, her brow furrowed. Goldie's smile faltered for a moment, her fingers tightening on the armrest. The control room was chaos now, producers barking orders, one shouting, "Cut to commercial," only to be overruled. The head cameraman swung his lens toward Jimmy, catching the smug tilt of his head, then back to Goldie, whose expression was a masterclass in composure under fire. She took a breath, her eyes narrowing slightly, but her voice remained calm, almost dangerously so. "Jimmy," she said, her tone measured, "I've played a lot of roles in my life. Some funny, some serious, all of them with heart. If you think those characters were dumb, maybe you weren't paying attention." She paused, letting the words sink in, and the audience erupted in applause, a wave of support washing over the stage. "I've always believed in bringing joy, in making people laugh. That's not ditzy, that's power." The crowd roared, but Jimmy's smile didn't waver. He leaned forward, undeterred, his voice dropping into a mock confiding tone. "Oh, come on, Goldie, you know I'm kidding, but seriously." He paused, his eyes glinting with something darker. The band's music faded, the studio lights seemed to dim, and every eye was on him. Goldie sat perfectly still, her gaze unyielding, as if daring him to go further. The air was thick, the tension a living thing, coiling tighter with every second. Backstage, Carla gripped a crew member's arm, whispering, "He's going too far." In the control room, the producer's voice crackled through headsets. "Get ready to cut the feed." Jimmy opened his mouth, the next words poised on his lips, and the studio held its breath. The studio lights burned hotter, or so it seemed, as Jimmy Fallon leaned forward, his voice dripping with a mix of charm and venom. "Goldie, you laughed at the world back then," he said, his eyes glinting with a challenge. "But who's laughing at you now?" The question hung in the air, sharp and cruel, a dagger aimed at her age, her relevance, her legacy. The audience gasped, a collective intake of breath that seemed to suck the oxygen from the room. A camera swiveled, catching the shock on faces in the front row, while backstage, the control room erupted in chaos. "He's lost it," a producer barked, slamming a fist on the console. "Get ready to cut to commercial, now!" Goldie Hawn sat frozen for a heartbeat, her blue eyes locked on Jimmy's. The silence was deafening, the weight of his words pressing against the studio walls. Then, slowly, she rose from her chair, her cream blazer catching the light as she stood tall, her presence commanding the stage. The audience leaned forward, sensing a shift, a reckoning. Her smile was gone, replaced by a quiet intensity that made the air crackle. "Jimmy," she began, her voice low but resonant, carrying to every corner of the studio. "You want to talk about laughter? Let's talk about respect." She stepped forward, her gaze never leaving his. "For decades, I've poured my heart into this industry, making people laugh, cry, think. I've built a career on joy, on resilience, on standing up for what matters. And tonight, I came here to talk about helping kids who are struggling, who need hope. But instead, you've chosen to reduce me to stereotypes, to age, to irrelevance." Her voice grew stronger, each word a hammer strike. "You think it's clever to mock a woman for growing older? To imply my work, my life, doesn't matter because I'm not 25 anymore? That's not just lazy, it's shameful." The audience erupted in applause, a wave of support that shook the studio. A woman in the third row stood, clapping fiercely, and others followed, their cheers drowning out the faint protest from Jimmy's nervous laugh. He shifted in his seat, his grin faltering, his hands fumbling with his note cards. "Goldie, come on, I was just—" he started, but she cut him off, her voice rising with a fire that silenced him. "No, Jimmy, you don't get to hide behind just joking. You don't get to belittle me or any woman for the roles we've played, the battles we've fought, or the years we've lived. You want to talk about who's laughing? Look around." She gestured to the audience, now on their feet, their applause a thunderous rebuke. "They're not laughing at me. They're standing with me. Because they know what you seem to have forgotten. Talent doesn't age, and dignity doesn't fade." The control room was a storm of panic, producers shouting, headsets crackling, a cameraman zooming in on Jimmy's face, now pale, his smirk gone. Goldie took a step closer to the desk, her eyes blazing. "You asked if I was invited to the Oscars. Let me tell you something. I don't need an invitation to know my worth. I'm here, still creating, still fighting for what's right. And my work with Mind UP, it's going to outlast your cheap shots. It's going to change lives." She turned to the audience, her voice softening, but no less powerful. "This isn't just about me. It's about every woman who's been told she's too old, too much, or not enough. It's about every person who's been dismissed because they don't fit someone's narrow idea of relevance. We're not here to be your punchline. We're here to make a difference." The crowd roared, a tidal wave of cheers and whistles. A young woman in the back held up her phone, already posting number Team Goldie. Goldie straightened, her gaze sweeping the studio one last time. "I came here to talk about hope, Jimmy, but you've reminded me of something else. We still have work to do. So I'm done here." With that, she turned, her heels clicking against the stage as she walked off, head high, leaving a stunned silence in her wake. The band hesitated, then struck up a weak transition tune, but it couldn't mask the chaos. The audience was on its feet, clapping, some shouting her name. Backstage, Carla rushed to meet her, tears in her eyes, whispering, You were incredible. Jimmy sat frozen, his hands gripping the desk, his face a mask of forced composure. Well, folks, he stammered, that's, Goldie Hawn. The crowd's applause turned to murmurs, some boos cutting through. The producer's voice screamed through headsets, "Go to commercial! Now!" The feed cut, but the damage was done. Within minutes, the internet exploded. Clips of Goldie's speech went viral. Hashtags like #Team Goldie and #Fallon exposed trending worldwide. X posts flooded in, praising Goldie's grace and condemning Jimmy's cruelty. Goldie Hawn just schooled Fallon on respect, one user wrote, racking up thousands of likes. Another posted, Jimmy thought he could take her down. She took his show instead. MindUp's website crashed from a surge in donations as Goldie's message resonated far beyond the studio. Jimmy's team scrambled to control the narrative, but the backlash was relentless. Viewers called for apologies, sponsors whispered about pulling ads, and The Tonight Show's ratings took a nosedive. Jimmy issued a tepid statement on X, claiming his questions were meant in fun, but it only fueled the fire. Meanwhile, Goldie emerged stronger, her charity gaining global attention, her legacy reaffirmed. She posted a simple message on X. "Thank you for the love. Let's keep fighting for kindness and mental health." It garnered millions of likes. In the days that followed, Goldie's speech became a rallying cry, a testament to standing tall against disrespect. Jimmy, haunted by his misstep, faced a long road to rebuild his reputation. But for Goldie, it was a triumph, a reminder that her light, her voice, her power could never be dimmed.